You're listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast, a podcast for Steelers fans by Steelers fans. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, read articles on renegadeblitz.com, and like us on Facebook. And welcome back to the Renegade Blitz podcast, episode number 2, and our first recap episode. I'm Ty Polk, joined once again by Chris Ward, and also joined for the first time by Renegade Blitz writer Guthrie Rasmussen. Guthrie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And normally we are joined by our fearless leader, Zach Napolitano, on the Renegade Blitz podcast, but he's currently dealing with family issues, personal issues, so he will be on future episodes that we recap the past Steelers game. And well, guys, it was great to finally see the NFL and, more importantly, the Pittsburgh Steelers returning to action. On Monday Night Football, they defeated the New York Giants 26-16. The big story, of course, was the return of Ben Roethlisberger, who, outside of some early rust, his return was pretty good, all things considered. He completed 21 passes on 32 attempts for 239 yards and 3 touchdowns. Guys, what did you think about the performance of Big Ben?
Yeah, I thought Ben, like you mentioned, that he was rusty in the beginning, but towards the end of that second half, that 2-minute drill, that's when you really started to see the old Ben back there. And that was a beautiful pass there he had to Juju. He just lobbed it up.
Yeah, it was definitely after he shook off that rust, it was just kind of back to old Ben. I like how I think it was smart kind of easing him back in because he didn't have any mistakes this game. He had no fumbles, no interceptions. He had a couple questionable checkdowns that, you never were too in sync with Connor or whoever, Benny Snell, who was in the backfield. And, yeah, he looked pretty good.
Yeah, early on, it was, by my count, the first 2 plays on the first drive were runs and then a little bit of a check down pass to Connor. And then on the second drive, it was run, check down. And then finally he opened up for his first completion pass, maybe 3 or so yards inside that line of scrimmage to Juju Smith-Schuster. And then, of course, the first catch by Chase Claypool, a sparkling one, a beautiful toe tap that moved the chains. Guys, what did you think about Chase Claypool's first catch?
That was a beautiful grab there, toe tap, right down the right sidelines. They've been talking, media reporters about him doing that all training camp, and he displayed there in his first game that catch.
It was just good to see it come to fruition. And I mean, you could tell he worked his butt off. I seen some of he has a YouTube channel, and you got to see kind of how he was as a person. And I mean, I couldn't be more excited to have him on the team.
He's gotten a nickname Mapletron. And also the one thing that I seen on Twitter that, for a first catch, it's kind of like wild for someone to compare it to a Super Bowl catch, but in this town, we love hyperbole. He got compared to Santonio Holmes in the back of the end zone in Super Bowl 43. And while similar catches, it's just like, he's looking good so far. Let's pump the brakes a little bit there.
Yeah, that was that toe tap. I don't know if, dare I mention his name, but that was like Antonio Brown-esque.
Yeah.
Tony Toe Tap. I remember that NFL Films soundbite. It's certainly great to see that the Steelers are continuing, at least so far, their great heritage with wide receivers. And speaking of wide receivers, the return of Juju Smith-Schuster, 6 catches for 69 yards and 2 touchdowns. Guys, what are your thoughts on Juju so far to open up the season?
I think it was a very, impressive showing with him. Obviously, it's not, 69 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's pretty impressive numbers. I mean, just coming back, Ben he did a good job of spreading the ball around. So I think that's pretty impressive for him to have, that stat line.
Yeah, I think, Ben coming back, that's really the key for Juju. We saw his first couple of years, that chemistry they had, and last year it was just a mess last year in the quarterback situation. I remember one thread where Hodges threw a deep pass to deep pass down the left sideline and against the Chargers, and it was underthrown.
Mm-hmm.
Now he doesn't have to worry about that with having a future Hall of Fame quarterback throwing the ball to him.
Yeah.
Can we talk about his recovery?
Oh, absolutely. Juju kind of was on the hands team just about anywhere. And certain media pundits like to make fun of him for fumbling in big situations. Well, he came up huge in the recovery, especially after that Cam Hayward interception, which we'll get into a little bit later. But really, the entire Steelers wide receiver corps, Deontay Johnson had a little bit of a rough first half, the muff punt and everything. The entire corps, we failed to remember James Washington showing that farm boy strength, just bullying people into the end zone, getting hit up into the air, feet charging like Eddie George in the Super Bowl against the Rams at the turn of the millennium. It was really a sparkling night for the entire Steelers wide receiver corps. We were wondering, of course, there was a question with Deontay coming in with Ben. This is his first time really getting passes from Ben. James Washington, his rookie year, wasn't necessarily the best around with, we could say he was always plagued by that arm injury. Somewhat healthy Ben, but still, it was a Ben that could do something out there, led the league in passing yards. And of course, to see Juju, what it's all about, coming back and really playing great in his first game of the season. Certainly, you could see, and of course, Eric Ebron, his first catch in black and gold, a nice little catch that moved the chains and got the Steelers back into the red zone for the first time this season. All in all, a great night for the Steelers receivers corps. And what do you think is the key moving forward for these guys?
I think they just got to keep on building that chemistry with Ben. They're all they're all young. Juju's the veteran at 23, which is amazing. But
that's so weird to say.
Just keep on building on that that chemistry, and they'll continue to build off of it.
Yeah, it's a young receivers corps. Of course, Juju, even being the veteran, is 6 months younger than Deontay Johnson in his second year. And of course, we'll do age counts around here. 25, Chris 24, Guthrie.
I'm 26.
26. I gave you a couple years off, so it's just certainly the Steelers wide receiver corps are doing a little bit better than we are right now. But we're working on it, I assure you. Another big thing, of course, was the running backs corps. We mentioned the Benny Snell fumble that Juju recovered earlier, but of course, really Snell took over for James Conner, who left the game with a left ankle injury. It was 19 carries for 113 yards, no touchdowns, but still, he gave us nice runs out there. There wasn't the big chunks that you got from Saquon Barkley, even though he didn't do well in the running game that game, but at least in the receiving game, he was making chunks, and we'll talk about the Steelers' reaction to the Giants' defense later. What did you guys think about the running back duo of Benny Snell and James Conner?
I was very excited about, hearing it here, having them two come into it this year together. But I love James Conner, but he just didn't, it was the injury coming. I'm sure it was the injury that really slowed him down, but having Benny Snell it's like getting those second down and manageables, just makes dividends. It's the first couple drives with Conner, he just got stuffed twice in a row, and then it's a third down and 10, and that didn't make, a very good position for Ben Roethlisberger to get that first down. And it was just so refreshing to see when Benny Snell got going, just to have a running back again. It makes you miss Bell, because he was basically guaranteed 4 or 5 yards, per carry. And he was the dual threat. And it's like, if we can get Benny Snell, catching a few balls, I think he could really open up some defenses.
Yeah, you have to feel for Conner. He put in so much work this offseason, and then for him to suffer another injury. It's supposedly not supposed to be a high ankle injury, so that's good. And I've seen some reports that he's expected to be the starter still if he's healthy for the game on Sunday. But even when he was not injured, obviously during the game, he wasn't very impressed. Like, he seemed indecisive, hitting holes. And he just didn't seem like the Conner of that we're kind of, we're used to when he's healthy, like in 2018. Yeah. ESPN, I had the stats on it. He had 6 yards, or he had 6 carries for 9 yards. But Benny Snell looked really good. He was hitting those holes fast, and he was running real hard. Had a couple big runs. I think he had two runs over 20 yards. And like you said, that 119 yards rushing, that was the first time in his career that he went over 100.
Yeah, the one thing that I was wondering with this is just that I felt that New York's defense was going after Connor well. It's like, yes, maybe he wasn't able to make that one cut and all that stuff, but try not to make me sound crazy. I thought that in terms of like the success that the Steelers were going to have this year was going to be based on if Ben Roethlisberger can throw the ball, because that could at least open up a little bit for James Conner. And it's just like the less guys you have in the box ultimately can help a running back, even though James Conner has had a season in which he went over 1,000 yards scrimmage.
I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying. That's actually a good point. I think for those first couple drives, the Giants knew that the Steelers were going to ease Ben back in. They probably knew that we were going to run it. I think they just definitely loaded up that box and made it very hard for him to get going at that stage. I think if he didn't get hurt, I think he would have eased more into it as Ben got going. But yeah, he just, like you said, this didn't really look like Connor. In my opinion, he looked, this might have been after the injury. He looked kind of sluggish to me. And that's not the Connor, I remember from last year. And I know, and he's put in so much work in the offseason. I think it's that injury or something that it was kind of building up. I saw him on the sidelines jumping around, trying to work it out. And he had his helmet on at all times. He obviously didn't want to come out of the game. So, I mean, it was pretty sad to see, but.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he was, it could have been the rust, nervousness of the beginning of the game, but he looked sluggish. Not like where Snell gave him a spark and he was hitting the holes fast, and he really had some nice runs when they pulled the guard, and they were showing a lot of motion that they've been talking about all season with Matt Canada coming in as the quarterback coach, and he's like the guru of pre-snap motion and all that. But I thought Snell looked really good. He broke some tackles, got some extra yards off of that, and I think it's a serious question you have to wonder now: is he the top running back? I mean, I've seen it, like I said earlier, that I think they're going to go with Connor still because, they believe in him. But there's a part of me that thinks that Snell is actually the better running back.
Mm-hmm. It's like it's kind of he came up with Le'Veon Bell, so you feel like he kind of has that. He does too much behind the line of scrimmage. Like he's trying. I don't want to say he's trying to be Le'Veon Bell, but he's back there trying to wait for the lineman to make a hole, like the patience. That's, I guess, the word for it. And with Benny Snell, he sees a little glimpse of light and he's through it and up for 5 yards, 10 yards, 20 yards. And right now with Connor, he just has that. He was just being too slow and not hitting the holes when they were open. He was waiting for something bigger, it looked like.
I think the question is really, you have to remember when Le'Veon Bell was here as a Steeler, it was a totally different scheme in terms of offensive lines. The Steelers still had Mike Munchak, who was on the Broncos coaching staff now. How much do you think that Connor is not really playing within himself? Because this isn't exactly the guy that I remember that was just another one of those world-beating Pitt running backs that me and Chris seen in our backyards. It's just like I remember him being a little bit more of a guy that just lines up and he'll give you a nice 20 or so touches and you expect at least 100 yards out of him.
Yeah, I said this last year. I think he's like that power back like we saw when he was at Pitt, and he's at his best when they're pulling those guards on the counter plays and you have a fullback there. He's good with a fullback leading him. I think that's when he's pretty. He's good at catching out the backfield. He can block and stuff, but he doesn't do anything like extraordinary well. I think as far as I don't know, where would you rank him as a running back in the league? I mean, his biggest issue is staying healthy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd put him probably top 15
That's what I was saying, like top 15, and
if he's healthy, yeah, and
he's decreasing. He's going down with not being to stay healthy. I don't want to be too critical because it's the first game, and who knows if he'll be back. But it's not a good start off where he struggled when he was playing, and then he got injured, and then Benny Snell comes in and rushes for 119 yards. Or 113 yards.
Yeah, it really makes you miss, having, especially last year. You could tell that this last year was the year Roosevelt and Nix was hurt. So it's like you could tell, like you guys mentioned, the fullback. It's like not having that fullback it kind of hurt him last year. I mean, I don't remember his numbers too well last year, but it wasn't great, but he had a decent year given the circumstances. I think if they put some packages in with that had Derek Watt, I think maybe we would have seen him as a lead blocker. I think we might have seen some different results, but there's no way of knowing. I don't think we saw much of Derek Watt in the offensive.
Yeah, I'll have to look back, but
I don't remember seeing it at all, honestly. I think I would have noticed it.
They did a lot of I saw single back, I was shotgun or something with, receiver motioning across and stuff.
You just have to wonder with James, is it a combination of, the effects of the cancer treatments and all that stuff, trying to be something he's not, trying to be Lev Bell 2.0? There's so many questions with him. And of course, Tomlin's not going to exactly be the guy that tells you who's the, what's the term he was looking for? Bell cow?
Oh, yeah, bell cow.
Yeah, who's really going to be the bell cow of the offense? It should be Benny Snell for week 2 against the Broncos, even if James Conner is healthy. But, of course, as you said, there's a possibility that Tomlin's going to go back to the well at least one more time to try and see that, is this the end of James Conner feature back in Pittsburgh?
Yeah. And if he would do that, would you blame him for putting Conner back in? They're all in on him being the RB1, but I mean, you got to ride the hot hand in Benny Snell, after his performance, or what do you think would be the best option here for the Steelers if Conner is deemed healthy?
It's got to be Snell. It's just got to be Snell. It's like the fumble aside, it's just like there was a noticeable giddy up with him, and we don't have the time that we did with Ben Roethlisberger. Whoever can contribute right now should be the starter, and Benny Snell contributed on Monday, so Benny Snell should be RB1. It's a question of, will he be it?
If I'm the Steelers, if he's not healthy, I'd give him the week to get better. Don't push him too hard. Because we have capable running backs. We have Jalen Samuels, who, he had a game last year, like a crazy game where he had. I think having them both together in different things, and as long as Jalen Samuels isn't taking a wildcat catch or anything like that, like last year, I think we'll be all right. I want to see Anthony McFarland in there a little bit. Just spice it up a little bit. I don't think you need to rush Conner back. I still think he's got something that's an asset to this team, but not right now if he's hurt or anything like that. I think we got Benny Snell hot. I think he should be the starter next week, or at least he should have the majority of carries next week, because you can only have so many carries in the game. Eventually it's like if we get down late, then it's going to be passing. The runnings won't matter. It's like what happened with us. We were ahead. We were able to run the ball.
That's the big thing for the Steelers. So That's one question that we have going into Denver this week, is who's going to be the running back. The second question is, what's going to go on with the offensive line here? Of course, the Steelers came into the game. David DeCastro was out at left guard, so stepping in was 2-time Super Bowl winner, former Penn State grad, and of course Central Catholic Viking Stefan Wisniewski coming in for Pittsburgh, but he got injured with a torn pec, and then of course the absolutely brutal ACL tear for Zach Banner, who is now out for the season with the Steelers. It's, guys, who's going to be stepping up for the Steelers' offensive line? Dotson's there. You still have Al Villanueva, and Pouncey's still there, but it's filling in left guard and right tackle for the Steelers.
Yeah, it could be possibly a real makeshift line against Denver. Banner, that was brutal news to see. Just the amount of work he put in to win that spot and getting the position to be the right tackle as a starter. But yeah, I think and Wisniewski, who knows if he'll be ready to go with that pec. Anytime you hear a pec, you kind of you don't know the degree to it, but that injury always kind of scares you. But
last time we heard pec, it was Cam Hayward out for a year. It's varies, but it's still scary to hear again.
And then who knows with DeCastro? It's kind of up in the air. No one really knows what his status is as of right now. So you could see core four, which I wouldn't really be too worried. Banner, he slightly beat him out for that right tackle position. But right guard Dotson, that'll be a big step, first career start. But there were some positive reports about him in training camp. So and then there was reports that the Steelers signed the former fourth round pick in 2016, Gerald Hawkins. Mm-hmm. But then there's a report by Jerry Dulac who said that they didn't sign him off the practice squad from the Texans. So who knows there?
Mm-hmm. So I guess that's still developing. But do you guys feel like we should go out and check that market out? There's a couple guys out there that I've kind of looked at. They're not, their names aren't worth mentioning right now, but there are definitely a couple guys out there. Do you think it's in the Steelers, benefit to go out there and get a guy? Let's say if some other guys have to go on IR.
Yeah. If there's anyone about that could help the Steelers, just talk about them for a little bit.
Quickly, Josh Klein. The only reason I'm going to say him is he went to my high school. He played in the Patriots for a couple of years. He won, I think, 2 Super Bowls with them, and he's most recently in the Vikings, but he's currently a free agent. He's just had, I think, starting experience. I don't know where he's at right now, health-wise, but I think if he's a free agent, I think go ahead and call him up. And I think you just need more bodies at this point. Depth. You need depth in this league. But with the Steelers, you hear Tomlin always say next man up. I think that might come into favor this week. I think we just got to wait to see how the chips fall with all this.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know the degree with Wisniewski, but I'll assume that he won't be able to go. I'm not so sure though.
Who's on the Steelers practice squad that can fill in on the offensive line right now?
They have a bunch of guys that they signed from the XFL.
Yep, we have a couple extra spots, because of COVID.
But I don't think they really have anyone. They have that J.C. Hassenauer, but
oh yes, that's a good one to mention.
He plays center, but he's guard capable too. He definitely he'll be on the they won't put him as starter. They'll put Dotson before him, but he'll be there as a backup definitely.
Yeah, because the one thing with Steelers, this killed their line depth. When you're already going into there with a guy with DeCastro out, and then it's Wisniewski. But also, I want to get your guys' take on the offensive line play for the Steelers. It was all in all, outside of a couple sacks on Ben, and then somewhat of, James Conner not really able to get it going. It was a pretty decent night, you would say, for those guys.
Yeah, it was nothing earth shattering, but they got the job done. It was like a workman-like type of performance. The receiving core looked good. I thought, their top 4 guys all made plays, and in some ways, Johnson started to look more comfortable as the game went on. I was a little nervous there with the punt issues and catching the ball on punts. And then he had a drop, and then there was a miscommunication there with Ben at one point. So, but he started to get it together in the second half.
That was really the one big play that really made you think it's going to be one of those games for the Steelers where just everything that could go wrong possibly went wrong. But fortunately, the Steelers defense managed to shut them down again and only held them to a field goal by Graham Gano, when really, aside from last year, any other year, that's probably a touchdown for the Giants.
Yeah, you think about the Giants, offense is like how do you not? How do you not score in that situation? You got the ball at the 3-yard line, and they just went 3 and out and kicked a field goal. I mean, that's one play, and then later in the game, Hayward had that interception on the 19-play drive.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that's his first career interception, and I'm glad it happened there. That defense really, they didn't miss a beat from last year, and it's really encouraging to see that, having been Roethlisberger and that defense together. Because last year, that's what really sucked. We had the defense, but we didn't have the offense. And the years before with AB and Le'Veon, it's like we had the offense, but we didn't have the defense.
You wish you could merge the two together, where you have the offense from a few years ago, the defense they have now, because that defense, they played the Giants, but
you see more tape and more things. Yeah, it was encouraging.
The way they flew around and swarmed to the ball and to shut down Barkley like that, 6 yards rushing. The Giants' offensive line didn't look good because the Steelers, they had a lot of open plays where they just tackled him in the backfield.
Yeah, specifically the position where Bud Dupree was coming from, because he was always in that backfield.
Yeah. They have some good receivers, and Barkley, Danny Dimes, he had that one big throw, which was just to
Darius Slayton.
Yeah,
a lot of people are trying to figure out who was the one that they can say they messed up in this situation. It's just like Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler were saying Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Yeah,
a lot of people were looking back and then saying no, it was Hayden, and then you heard a little bit of a miffling for Nelson, which I just thought it was weird. And it's just
Nelson had no help, no safety help, because Fitzpatrick came down on the crossing route, and then I guess Hayden was supposed to fill that area.
That just happens, I think teams are eventually going to get that.
It's one of those plays that, it just goes that's your first real game. And it's just these things happen. You don't really expect the Steelers defense like that. And there wasn't really, outside of Saquon Barkley going out there and hurdling over Mike Hilton.
Yeah, twice, I think, right?
Yeah. It's just there wasn't necessarily, it's there were some chunk plays, and of course that mammoth 19-play drive where it kind of gave you old inklings of the Steelers defense from maybe just a little bit before Fitzpatrick came in there, where it was just you can't get off the field on third down. The Giants were 1 of 6 during the first half on third down conversions. That drive alone, they went 4 for 5, including a 4th down conversion on a pass that was just one of the longest 3-yard, 2-yard passes completed I have ever seen.
Yeah. And I was a long, being out there, and for the Steelers to, will through that, and for Bud to make that play and Cam get that interception, that was huge. That was really, after that, they drove down the field and got that field goal, and it became 19-10.
And really, with Monday's game, we had 3 sacks from the Steelers and 2 interceptions, but they didn't necessarily come from the guys you would usually expect. You expect secondary guys like Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden, Steve Nelson, maybe even Hilton coming through with an interception and stuff like that. But instead, the interceptions came from TJ Watt and Cam Hayward. The sacks came from Mike Hilton, Vince Williams, and who else? Who was the third guy?
Oh, Tuitt.
Tuitt had a sack.
Tuitt had a sack. Wow. Just talk about the all-around contributions that didn't necessarily come from guys you'd expect.
Oh, okay. I thought Vince Williams had a really good game. He had 5 total tackles, a sack, 3 tackles for a loss, and a quarterback hit against the Giants.
I think as long as this team stays communicating, and with less fans, I think they're able to communicate. And as long as they communicate effectively, I think they all work cohesively together. Having Cam know the drop back and recognize, I'm going to drop back here. Same thing with TJ. Knowing that this is when I drop back, that was huge. for them to get that interception. Like, I mean, seriously, Cam Hayward dropping back, like that, when I saw him going back,
3-4 defensive end dropping back.
Yeah.
That's a 3-4 defensive end. People do not get this. I want you to go on to Madden right now and bust out a 3-4 playbook, and you will not see a defensive end drop back. You will see it in a 4-3, but that's usually an overload blitz.
Yeah.
That was honestly the most incredible thing. And also, we talked about Hayward's interception. The last interception he had in any competition of football, 2011 with the Ohio State Buckeyes, his final season at Ohio State. That's how rare it is for defensive ends to get interceptions. He's more likely to get a fumble return than anything else.
Yeah, that was a real heads up play, for him to run to the run to the area where Bud was getting pressure, and it just came right in his hands. He was in the right spot at the right time. That was just a great team defensive play there.
Yeah, no way better to celebrate a new contract, in my opinion.
Worth every penny. And Bud Dupree's pressure, really everything he did last night, or Monday night, excuse me. Everything Bud Dupree did Monday night, really, he's worth every penny. The Steelers got to find a way to pay that guy, because that guy was saying, pay me and pay me right now.
Yeah, it's going to be tough with the contract situation or the cap situation. They got Juju, look what he did on Monday night. They're going to have to pay a lot of players. TJ Watt's going to have to get a big contract. So I don't know. You can't. This is like I said. This is the year you think they would really have to put it together with the defense they have and Ben and the offensive weapons he has.
And also, we had a cameo appearance with Alex Highsmith. He was in on a couple plays as well. Mm-hmm. So it was good to see a potential replacement also having his name heard and making a little bit of noise himself.
I mean, we also saw Ola Adini. They both looked fast. I think they were giving people some breathing, time to breathe. Yeah, they look. I saw one play that stuck out with me as Highsmith as he was pursuing Danny Dimes, and I mean he didn't get the sack, but it was just how much he was pressuring him, and he had that motor. I think any of those guys could step in for a couple plays or for a game, and we'd still see some success.
And also another guy who stepped up, and you normally don't really hear about 3-4 defensive linemen outside of guys like the ends you could hear from with Tuitt and Hayward, but Tyson Alalu, he stepped in as a defensive tackle, replacing Javon Hargrave. So it was good to see that a guy that's been in the organization for a while, he was listed as a defensive end, now finally stepping in and getting more playing time as defensive tackle in base formation.
Yeah, he looked really good. I saw him beat the center off the ball a couple of times and just tackled Barkley in the backfield. And the whole front seven, looked amazing.
There's obviously a theme here. We're talking about every single player on the defensive line, pretty much. I mean, that's just a testament to how well they played. I mean, the only weakness we really saw, if there was any weakness, was just a secondary. I mean, yeah, they're going to get, there will be some plays made against them no matter what. But that defensive line, there was really nothing wrong.
I think they were just all locking in on Barkley, and they were willing to have their corners, you play a little bit more man and, without some help.
Mm-hmm. I think when we're playing man, we're at our best. I mean, you guys remember zones. Sometimes those zones, if you got the right quarterback, they'll just pick you apart all day.
That brings nightmares.
Oh, I'm sorry to bring it up. I mean, yeah.
Cover the three, zone blitz, Tom Brady just, tearing through it.
I'd love to see these days, with especially after the Fitzpatrick trade, to see if the Steelers got one more chance to run it back with Brady and the Patriots. How would that be? I mean, they were successful in the last time that Ben was healthy at Heinz Field, and that's how they get their wins against the Patriots, really. But we're staying away from the Patriots, even though they're not the subject. It's the New York Giants, but you just have to wonder that as a fan.
Speaking of zone, the Steelers offense, they did pretty well attacking that area. You saw a lot of underneath routes and rub routes, and they attacked that area. quick passes over the middle, like we saw with James Washington when he scored that touchdown. He powered his way in for the score.
And we will reference the talk you had with Bobby Skinner of Talking Giants. I mean, really the question was, I seen Bradbury was really a rover cornerback against the Steelers. He was covering a lot of the Steelers wide receivers. It's like I'm trying to look at the tweet that I had that mentioned like, hey, this is what we talked about on the podcast for us. One second. Bradbury was on Johnson. Bradbury was covering Juju a couple times. I mean, he was everywhere.
He had a couple nice pass breakups, and I believe he was in on that strip on Snell that Juju recovered. But he's their best guy, bringing their secondary. They have a lot. They're very inexperienced, and like we had with Bobby Skinner, they were starting guy that was at Division II school opposite Corey Ballantyne.
Yeah, looking on Skinner's Twitter page, he was kind of tearing up Ballantyne a little bit.
Oh, really? I haven't checked yet. I don't see what he said.
I mean, it's just like, again, we thank Bobby for coming on, but
yeah, Bobby was really good. He gave us, we pretty much knew the entire Giants roster, based because he gave us the whole rundown.
And really, the one big thing that I think kept the Giants around with the Steelers was a surprising play of Daniel Jones, who really kind of showed us, especially during that long drive to open the third quarter, if he gets, a little bit more time and maybe a little bit of a better offensive line.
Yeah,
he stepped in there and made a couple plays. Noticeably, that touchdown to Slayton. I mean, Danny Dimes. It was like, okay, I'm a believer after that.
Mm-hmm. We've definitely seen improvement from him off of last year. He had a ton of turnovers I've heard mentioned, and I remember seeing. The one sack they had, I don't remember who sacked him, but he almost dropped the ball. I mean, they made a comment. Sorry, I'm going to do it. So during the sack, he held onto the ball real well. I think that was definitely an improvement off of last year. He had a lot of strip sacks against him. So he's definitely improved on holding onto the ball. I think the Giants definitely have a future in him. Other than a couple turnovers, he had a couple sloppy plays, but I think they definitely got somebody to build off there.
Yeah, I remember Chris Fowler actually mentioning, and Kirk Herbstreit, who normally do college, they were for the NFL that night, mentioning that an emphasis was two hands on the football when there was a potential that he could be sacked, or if he was getting held by a defensive lineman or a linebacker or anything like that. So certainly there was an emphasis, and there was no fumbles on the record that night for Jones.
Yeah, he led the league last year. He had 18 fumbles, and then 11 of them were lost.
So at least for a lot of things, it was a good night for Jones, a nice starting point. Really, when you look at the interceptions, it's like, really, aside from the Hayward interception, Jones was good. I mean, you can't really blame. You don't expect a pass rushing linebacker like Watt to drop back into coverage, but when it happened, it's one of those things where you just got to tip your cap and move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a heck of a play by Watt there, just to have those instincts to because he was acting like he was rushing and then he backed off, and Jones just simply didn't see him, and he was able to snag the ball out.
Yeah, of course, he had a couple nice scrambles that were noticeably during that 19-play drive to open the second half for the Giants. But of course, we mentioned it a little bit earlier around this podcast. The big thing was stopping Saquon Barkley. 15 carries for 6 yards with the name Saquon Barkley. All the things that he can do, which is just amazing. And to put it in perspective, Ben Roethlisberger, even though he had officially 3 carries on the docket, had more yards gained rushing than Saquon Barkley. Did you have that for your 2020 Apocalypse Bingo?
No, I don't think anybody out there would have thought that Ben would outrushed Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I mean, how about that out of Big Ben? It's like it's just one of those things. Like, oh, is he going to do it or is he going to throw it away? I mean, you saw him grab his knee and then he pulled himself over there for 12 yards or whatever it was. And I mean, it's just fires you up to see, him looking like he's enjoying football again. I mean, there were a couple nervous moments with him, but injury wise, but it's like when I saw him run there, I'm like, oh God, please protect yourself. You know what I mean? It's just like you saw big bodies landing on him. You're like, oh, please be all right.
That's the last thing we need is Ben to have another season-ending injury.
I'm not even worried anymore when Ben comes up limping. I just think that's just his thug walk for me. Yeah. I think that's just like his everyday walk. It's like every time you see a camera go back to Ben, it's like early on in my life I was like, oh God, he's hurt. Now I'm just like, it's just Ben. He'll walk it off.
I mean, as long as it's not that thrown elbow, he's fine.
You've seen that man get up from some of the worst hits ever. It's just like I remember Richard Seymour just like for the Raiders just absolutely crushing that guy once, and it's just like there was one time where they were holding on to his leg and he folded it up like a hot pocket, and it was just and he gets right back up. You just don't get it with that guy, but we're lucky to have him, and that's now the start of the Daniel Jones no Eli Manning era out in New York. So
yeah, it's going to be like fun that ESPN graphic. It's like you're seeing all these young quarterbacks and you have, all these young Heisman winning quarterbacks and you got the old vet there, 2 Super Bowls. It was we're very lucky to have them, just having that experience. I mean, Lamar Jackson's great. I think he's the best in the division right now. I think he will be successful, but having that experience, having those playoff wins, I think means a lot in this game.
We're now on to week 2 next week at Heinz Field. No fans once again. We might have crowd noise. We didn't have crowd noise in New York, but who knows what we're going to be doing down in Heinz Field. We'll find out game day. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Denver Broncos. And of course, the big story coming out of it is Von Miller will be out for the Broncos, which with the offensive line situation for the Steelers is probably a good thing.
It definitely makes it easier knowing he's not there. He's a heck of a player, but I mean, I think we'll definitely take it given the offensive line news. There's definitely some other guys to worry about, which we'll get into, but having that, that Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, might I add, will really make our lives a little bit easier.
There's a lot of other guys on that Denver Broncos defense. Bradley Chubb is another guy that the Steelers still have to worry about. It's just like Vaughn's gone, but there's still terrors that the Steelers offensive line and really they have to game plan around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tomlin today, he talked about how he said that Bradley Chubb reminded him of Bud Dupree. And he's definitely a guy to watch for this game. Denver, their whole plan was to have a pairing with him, but they both, Miller and Chubb, cannot stay healthy at the same time. So, the Steelers definitely catch a break there, but not having to go with Von Miller, especially with this offensive line issues that they're experiencing.
Guthrie, who's another guy on the Broncos defense that the Steelers have to worry about?
I mean, there's some lesser known guys. I think they're active. You got Jarrell Casey. You've definitely heard of him. He's formerly with the Titans, from what I remember. They have Josie Jewell. I think you'll see these guys' names a lot. They're definitely starters. It's just they're not in the normal games that we watch. So, I mean, they definitely have guys that will show up. It's just not having Von Miller, who will be that presence on the other side of Bradley Chubb. And that's just what we're going to have to watch out for.
Justin Simmons is that's their star safety. A lot of people talk good things about him. Mm-hmm. Boye got injured. I think it was here. Said he suffered a dislocated shoulder in last night's game. So who knows if
another break for the Steelers. But once again, he's a great player, but it definitely will make our lives easier not having him, and expect the Steelers, or Ben Roethlisberger specifically, probably to pick on whichever corner is on that side.
The fact that AJ Bouye is on that team, it's just made me think about how, man, that Jaguars defense just got scattered real quick.
Mm-hmm. we forget they were in that AFC Championship against the Patriots when they beat us, and they obviously didn't win, but everybody on that team is in different directions. It feels like defense, offense. Fournette's on the Bucs, Boye obviously on the Broncos, and Ramsey got himself a deal in LA. It's crazy.
They have Kareem Jackson, who's been around the league for a while as the other quarterback. Well, he's a pretty decent player. He's been around the league.
But another big thing for the Broncos, of course, is that offense led by Drew Lock, their second-round pick last year, who made a little bit of noise towards the end of the season, and John Elway and the Broncos hope that he's finally the quarterback that can answer after Peyton Manning's retirement and a little bit of turbulence, notably with former Steelers practice squad player and first-round pick for the Broncos, Paxton Lynch.
Yeah, that was a rough pick there by Elway. I don't know what he was thinking there. But I don't know. They seem to like Drew Lock in Denver. He has some promising, potential there. Did you guys watch the highlights of their game last night? Did you see it? That Lock overthrew the one receiver that was open. I think it was Hamilton was open. That they could have won the game.
Yeah. They definitely have some lesser-known receivers. I see Deontay Spencer on their roster. I believe he was with the Steelers, but anyway, it's just they definitely have that. They have that rookie out of Alabama, if I'm not mistaken, Jerry Jeudy.
Jerry Jeudy, yeah.
He had four receptions for 56 yards, and if he gets going, we just have to watch out for him. It's just you have to, and we can't forget to mention Cortland Sutton if he's active. I mean, they definitely have guys to worry about, but it's just we'll have to see how it goes. I think we have the guys to contain them, but yeah.
Don't forget they also have a nice little running back duo in Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay. So there's going to be a lot of guys that can answer the Steelers offensively, and will certainly be a challenge for the Steelers defense. And really, Denver's trying to build Kansas City version 2 out there. Really, a lot of speedy guys. So it's going to be interesting to see the Steelers respond to this because, in the future, the conference now runs through Patrick Mahomes. So how the Steelers handle this speedy, on paper, Denver Broncos offense is going to show if they have a shot against guys like Kansas City.
Hey, you're right with them being like trying to build that like 2.0 Kansas City offense, because they have Hamler, who was out last night, but he's expected to play this week. Ty, do you watch him a lot at Penn State?
I watched a lot of those Penn State guys. I mean, of course, Hamilton and Hamler. Hamler was a good guy. So it's gonna, and I remember him doing a lot against Pitt up at Happy Valley last year. So it's gonna be interesting to see how Denver responds to a loss to the Titans. Of course, it's how it is. It's a classic Tennessee Titans game where no one's really gonna score. It's a defensive battle.
Yeah.
But
you see how many kicks they missed? Their kicker missed.
Goskowski is on the Titans, and honestly, he caught the Vanderjack disorder, which is you leave one team and then you just suddenly can't kick anywhere else.
That'll be huge for them if they could get Hamler to play on Sunday for the Broncos. I guess the reports are saying that he was back practicing, and then for Cortland Sutton, he hopes he can do more by the end of the week.
Mm-hmm. Another group we could talk about real quick is their tight ends. We have a former Steeler, Nick Vannett, who kind of spent, the last half of the season, from what I remember, with the Steelers. And they also have their rookie out of Iowa State, if I'm not mistaken, Noah Fant. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was Iowa State. I think
it's Iowa.
They definitely have some threats in the middle of the field to worry about. They got him, Noah Fant, and they got Jake Butt out of Michigan. They definitely have some guys to worry about in the middle of the field as well.
How's their offensive line look?
Out of what I've seen, I don't recognize any names, but hey, if they got Munchak, I think they'll be formidable. I think you still got to respect them, but I just don't recognize any names on there, but that doesn't mean they're terrible. don't exactly have any stats.
Shelby Harris there on their defensive line. He's famous for intercepting Ben in the end zone 2 years ago.
Oh my! No, don't remind me of that game.
Yes, the last time they faced the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, good thing they're not playing in Denver because the Steelers they always struggle in Denver.
We needed a break out of Denver.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they always struggled out of Denver. Remember the 2005 AFC Championship game? Yeah. I don't know how NFL Films has managed to get that screaming woman out of the old tapes there. It's like I remember hearing her scream, and it's like nails on a chalkboard after every Steelers score. It's like you got to go look this up.
I mean, other than that great game there during the 2005-2006 playoffs, recent history, the Steelers they haven't done well in Denver or West Coast. You know how it is. Oakland. How many times they lost in Oakland?
How many times they lost to Oakland?
Yeah. Even they came to Pittsburgh, they beat them that one year.
Of course, guys, we forgot to talk about another former Steeler on the Broncos. Mark Barron now plays for the Broncos. And Guthrie, how did Barron do against the Titans?
He didn't have anything. He had a clean sheet. I guess we'll see if he gets any I don't know if he had any action. It's like with the Steelers, he never really fit in. I hope he finds that fit because for the Rams, he was actually decent. I thought he was a good linebacker. But for the Steelers, it's just he never really had a fit. He had 58 tackles, 3 sacks, 0 forced fumbles, and he had 1 interception. So, probably not what the Steelers are looking at for signing him for a 3-year contract. But because we cut him, the year after his first year, so it's obviously a pretty front-loaded contract. So we'll just have to see how he does. Again, I don't know if they might put him in there just because he's got a chip on his shoulder. He wants to be on against his former team. So we'll just have to see. But as of the Titans game, he didn't have many stats on his sheet.
Yeah, Mark Barron, he's like you said, he struggled sometimes. He looked lost in coverage at times last year, and I think he's a decent player. He's a veteran. He gives that presence, but he's nothing really. Something he adds probably depth to Denver, and
they got other guys.
Yeah, him and Van Nett, I don't expect to do much damage. I don't know. I know Van Nett mentioned when he got signed with Denver that he said that he didn't have a good experience in Pittsburgh. And, I could kind of see why he didn't have Roethlisberger like he expected when he.
I didn't feel like he got a fair shot.
Yeah, he was dealt a tough hand, but obviously having Rudolph and Hodges throwing passes.
I thought I wouldn't have mind seeing him back, but of course, when you got an upgrade in Eric Ebron, it's like, that's just the breaks how it goes in the league. But certainly, Barron was one of those guys. He was brought in to be a nickel linebacker. Effectively, he kind of plays that little tweener position in between linebacker and safety. So, and who really knows about how Denver's defense is set up? That's what we're going to have for our next podcast on Renegade Blitz. We'll be talking to Ryan Edwards, who will give us a little bit of insight on the Broncos for the Renegade Blitz. So be sure to stay tuned for that podcast. But anywho, guys, any final thoughts about the Giants game and also the upcoming game against the Broncos?
Like I said, I think, they had some rust in the beginning against the Giants, but they worked through it, and it was like a workman-like type of win. Defense was a complete dominance performance there. Just everybody across the board, stopping that run, shutting down Barkley, Watt making that interception, Hayward making that pick there at the red zone after that 19-play drive. Like we mentioned, Connor struggled early on and got injured, which is a tough break for him. He put so much work in this offseason, and to see him go down is tough to see. And then Snell came in and was running hard and breaking tackles. He broke some explosive plays. So I think, and the receivers, the top 4 guys all made plays.
I think final thoughts are the Steelers just have to win that turnover battle. Protect the ball, take the ball away, and capitalize off the takeaways. I think that's the main goal for them at this coming game.
Going into Denver, they just got to do what they continue to do what they did against the Giants, just pressure lock and put him in one-dimensional, smash the run, as like they like to say. Shut down that running game, and then don't give up the big play to the speedy receivers from Denver.
And of course, we'll talk more about the Broncos on the Renegade Blitz podcast. Ryan Edwards will be joining us, and that podcast will be coming out a little bit later in the week. But that's all for now. For Guthrie Rasmussen and Chris Ward, I'm Ty Polk. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Renegade Blitz. Thank you for listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, read articles on renegadeblitz.com, and like us on Facebook. Our podcast is available on YouTube.